We're monitoring this cabinet meeting, as you said, where the president has just said that he's going to be making a decision now within the next 24 to 48 hours on what to do in response to that horrific attack that we saw in Syria over the weekend. The question is, what are the military options on the table for the president of the United States, and how's he going to respond to the possible Russian involvement in the region, guys?
And let's get to the president.
Begin by condemning the heinous attack on innocent Syrians with banned chemical weapons. It was an atrocious attack. It was horrible. You don't see things like that, as bad as the news is around the world. You just don't see those images.
Joining us from the White House today, our former colleague, White House National Economic Council Director Larry Kudlow. Larry, it is good to have you back. Good morning to you.
Thank you, Carl. Appreciate it very much.
There's been some discussion about...
By the way, isn't what he tweeted right? Honestly, I'm a free trader. You're probably a free trader. President Trump is a free trader. He's told me that a million times. But look at the differentials. It can't last. It's not right. Somebody's got to do it. Somebody's got to say to China, you are no longer a third world country. You are a first world country. And you've got to act like one. There are laws on the books. Technology transfers, or let me say forced technology transfers, have to stop, and stealing intellectual property has to stop. Technology is our bread and butter, is it not? And they can't just take away our advances and innovations.
This is according to the New York Times. The FBI today raided the office of President Trump's longtime personal lawyer, Michael D. Cohen, reportedly, according to the Times, seizing records related to several topics, including reported payments to a pornographic film actress. Now, this could be one of the reasons why we saw the volatility in the latter part of today's trading session. They obtained, federal prosecutors did obtain that search warrant after receiving a referral from the special counsel, Robert S. Mueller. That's according to Mr. Cohen's lawyer, who is calling that search, quote, completely inappropriate and unnecessary.
Well, breaking within the past hour, China officially filing a complaint against U.S. steel and aluminum tariffs with the World Trade Organization. Now, this comes just hours after Chinese President Xi Jinping delivered a speech attempting to calm fears of a brewing trade war. So let's get to CNBC's Martin Sung, who's live in Bao, China, with the latest. Where are we now, Martin?
Courtney, good morning. Also, Dom, good morning. Yeah, what you referred to, that WTO complaint, is, I guess, the stick. But the carrot came earlier today in a sweeping half-hour-long speech. Xi Jinping positioned China, continued to do so, as a leader of globalization, of free trade, and also in the fight against climate change. So the kind of senior statesman-like speech that wouldn't be out of place at the United Nations or even before a joint session of Congress. But it was also an open for business speech, including opening of autos.
On manufacturing, we have basically opened up this sector, only with a small number of exceptions on automobiles, ships, and aircraft. Now, these industries are in a position to open up. Going forward, we will ease as soon as possible foreign equity restrictions in these industries, automobiles in particular.
The New York Times reporting within the past couple of minutes that the reason for the search was that law enforcement officials were looking for information about two women connected to the President of the United States. One is Karen McDougal, an ex-Playboy playmate who suggests that she had a relationship with President Trump at some point in the past decade. The other one is the woman known as Stormy Daniels, the porn star, who has also alleged that she had a relationship with the President of the United States. The New York Times reporting that sourcing people briefed on the information, so it's not clear where exactly they're getting their information, but sourcing multiple sources here for the New York Times, saying that the reason for the raid here was to get information about the relationship between Michael Cohen and these women. So unclear here is what alleged crime is at the root of all of this.
Your testimony, you have talked about a lot of power. You've been involved in elections. I thought your testimony was very interesting, really all over the world. The Facebook, 2 billion users, over 200 million Americans, 40 billion in revenue. I believe you and Google have almost 75% of the digital advertising in the U.S. One of the key issues here is Facebook too powerful? or are you too powerful? And do you think you're too powerful?
Well, Senator, I think most of the time when people talk about our scale, they're referencing that we have 2 billion people in our community. And I think one of the big questions that we need to think through here is the vast majority of those 2 billion people are outside of the US. And I think that that's something that, to your point, that Americans should be proud of.
Today, I am announcing that this year will be my last one as a member of the House. To be clear, I am not resigning. I intend to fulfill my served term as I was elected to do. But I will be retiring in January, leaving this majority in good hands with what I believe is a very bright future.
Facebook claims that users rightly own and control their data, yet their data keeps being exposed on your platform, and these breaches cause more and more harm each time. You have said that Facebook was built to empower its users. Instead, users are having their information abused with absolutely no recourse. In light of this harm, what liability should Facebook have? When users' data is mishandled, who is responsible and what recourse do users have? Do you bear that liability?
Congressman, I think we're responsible for protecting people's information for sure. But one thing that you said that I want to provide some clarity on.
Do you bear the liability?
Well, you said earlier, you referenced that you thought that we were only taking action after this came to light. Actually, we made significant changes to the platform in 2014 that would have made this incident with Cambridge Analytica impossible to happen again today. I wish we'd made those changes a couple of years earlier.
The market's under some pressure today while President Trump has threatened missiles in Syria and blasts are heard in Saudi Arabia. Our reporters are standing by closely monitoring the situation. Michelle Caruso-Cabrera is watching those developments in Saudi for us. Hans Nichols is at the Pentagon with the latest on Syria. And Hans, if we can, let's start with you.
Yeah. Well, they're assessing options. They're trying to give the presidents the best advice. As far as we can tell, no decision has been made. We heard from Secretary Mattis earlier. He said they're still looking at the intel. I think the most important thing to watch for in the next 24, 48 hours is what the OPCW actually determines. They have a team on the ground. They are looking to see just what kind of chemical weapon was used. Was it sarin or was it chlorine? The response will be proportional. One thing we keep hearing here is the word deterrence, and they want to send a clear signal to Bashar al-Assad that chemical weapons use will not be tolerated. Deterrence matched with proportionality, and then it's a question of timing, and we don't have a good sense of if there's been a final decision. We just know the president has clearly signaled that he wants to take military action. Guys?
Hans, thank you very much for that. Michelle has the latest and another perspective. Michelle.
Yeah, Saudi Arabia's air defense systems in Riyadh intercepted at least 3 ballistic missiles headed toward 3 different cities, that according to local media. Saudi state TV says one of the missiles was intercepted over the capital city of Riyadh after at least 3 blasts were heard and 3 clouds of smoke were seen in the sky. Houthi TV out of Yemen says that missile was targeting the Saudi Defense Ministry in the capital. The other 2 missiles, according to reports, were headed to the southern cities of Jizan and Najran, and both of those cities are close to the southern border with Yemen, also home to facilities controlled by Saudi oil company Aramco. As a result, the price of oil moving sharply on these reports, spiking to the highs of the day when we got them, highest levels that we have seen since December of 2014, 66.77 per barrel when it comes to WTI. Speaker Ryan holding his weekly presser. Take a quick listen.
Because they have the authority to do that right now. As to Syria itself, Bashar Assad and his enablers in Tehran and Moscow have committed another mass atrocity on people in Syria. I think the U.S. has an obligation to lead an international response to hold people accountable for that. I won't get ahead of the president. He is taking a very deliberate and careful response and approach to this. We've discussed this, and I don't want to get ahead of what he's going to plan on doing, only to say that I think it's important for us to help lead the international community to making sure that people are held accountable for these mass atrocities.
As our nation's top diplomat, will you champion diplomacy and offer actual plans? Will you stand up to President Trump and advise him differently when he's wrong? Or will you be a yes man? So, Mr. Director, I look forward to hearing your testimony, the answer to these questions and others as we move forward.
Thank you, sir. Director, you've been well background with the 3 senators who came before us, so I will not do that, but we thank you for being here. If you could summarize your testimony in about 5 minutes or so, Any written documents you have, we'll be glad to enter into the record. But with that, thank you for being here. We look forward to your comments.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. I'm not sure I can do it in 5 minutes, but I'll give it my level best.
We always try to set a high bar, realizing we're never going to achieve it.
Thank you, Chairman Corker, Ranking Member Menendez. Thank you. Thanks for the opportunity to appear here today as the nominee to be the United States Secretary of State. I am grateful to each of you for the attention that you have given this over the past weeks. So many of you have given so much time when there are so many global matters before us. I'm deeply appreciative of that. Should I be confirmed, this regular contact will continue. You can talk to Senator Burr. I worked at that diligently. As a former member of Congress, I understand the importance of that continued relationship and advice that comes from outside of the executive branch.
Mike, I mean, even though we were up strong at the end of the session after we got word out of the White House about maybe reconsidering the Trans-Pacific Trade Partnership, still, all day we were up pretty much at those levels.
We were. It really showed you that I think the market has tried to lower its sensitivity to some of the policy headlines and some of the fixations that we've had for the last couple of months, frankly. So I think all week you've had the market trying to almost sort of heal itself a little bit and get ready for more corporate news. And I think that's part of the process. You know, yesterday I was here saying the indexes were down. It kind of overstated the weakness because it really was a flat day. Today was a very strong day for the big cap indexes, but below the surface it was okay. I mean, I think it's basically back to normal. There's some two-way trading. You want to see financials and tech lead, which they did today. So I think it was one of those near a 3-week high. You have to say that's pretty good, but there's more to prove.
And this week, for the first time, we saw the president issue a clear directive, this time to his new National Economic Council Director, Larry Kudlow, himself an outspoken supporter of TPP, to study whether the U.S. should get back in. Here's Nebraska Senator Ben Sasse after a White House meeting on trade yesterday.
Definitely the big headline coming out of this meeting is that the president said he was deputizing Larry Kudlow and Ambassador Lighthizer to look at re-entering the TPP negotiations. I'm sure there are lots of particulars that they'd want to negotiate, but the president multiple times reaffirmed in general to all of us and looked right at Larry Kudlow and said, Larry, go get it done.
President Trump first mulled the possibility of rejoining TPP in a January interview with CNBC in Davos. At that time, Treasury Secretary Steven Mnuchin reached out to his counterparts of the 11 countries that are now part of the deal, but allies have been skeptical. The spokesperson for the Japanese embassy this week told reporters that it was already working to ratify that deal that was negotiated without the U.S. And given that it was what he called a matter of fact that U.S. re-entering the deal at this point would be difficult, especially given that no one knows exactly what Trump wants to make it a substantially better deal.
Police say that Aaron Shambo, a former Eagle Scout, made up to $10 million running a crypto drug ring. Shambo was alleged to be the mastermind behind one of the largest fentanyl pill mills in the country, and he made a fortune doing it.
In Utah, Bitcoin is what authorities say financed Aaron Shambo's fentanyl enterprise, a supply chain that prosecutors suspect caused 28 deaths after users overdosed on his pills. When police raided Shambo's home and alleged stash house, they seized bags of cash and at least 500 Bitcoin, according to court documents. They were worth about $750 each when he was arrested.
They had alleged that they were going to forfeit it at some point. Usually you'd expect that to be done when the case is resolved, when a defendant is adjudicated. But in this case, the value of Bitcoins was going into the thousands of dollars, even over $10,000. And so the government came to us and said, this is a valuable asset. We don't want to lose that value.
Your tweet took some people by surprise.
I would say.
When did this evolution in thinking occur? How long has it been going on?
Well, you know, like most Americans over the last 10 years, people's opinion on this issue have evolved. And I found myself, like any other American, my position evolving over the years. But I never really thought much about it until Kevin and I began conversations 4, 5, 6 months ago. And I thought to myself, you know, this might be something that I could lend my voice to that makes sense.
And the fact that you're joining the board, does that mean now you see a path in which either state regulations spread like wildfire or the federal level begins to embrace this instead of reject it?
Well, 29 states have had a vote, either a referendum or their state legislature voted to legalize the use of cannabis in some form. But there's a big conflict with the federal law where it's a Schedule I narcotic. Congress over the last couple of years has pretty much stopped any real enforcement. But federally funded institutions cannot touch this, can't do research. Most every university takes federal funds. They don't want to get anywhere close to it. You got the banking system that is scared to death to take this money, so there's a lot of cash rolling around. And so it's time for the federal government to take another look at this.
Hey there, thanks for checking out CNBC on YouTube. Be sure to subscribe to stay up to date on all of the day's biggest stories. You can also click on any of the videos around me to watch the latest from CNBC. Thanks for watching.